I'm the Kiriyama Distinguished Fellow, they say, here at the University of San Francisco. And this is the Center for the Pacific Rim. We're delighted to have you here this evening. I'm not going to spend a lot of time like I usually do making you behave here in the front row. What I'm going to tell you is that we have a wonderful, just promoted from assistant to associate curator at the Asian, Qamar. She's standing to my left, your right. She's a graduate of a prestigious university in the East. They have some too. This one is called NYU, New York University, down in the Village. But she tells me that where she got to do her work is in a mansion across the street from the Metropolitan Museum on Fifth Avenue. I should have gone to that school. Her show, which has taken many, many months to put together and has now made her the busiest woman in all of San Francisco. She's had no time to join the Occupy San Francisco movement. And she is now here, and I turn it over to her to tell you about the wonders of India. It's yours.
Thank you, Professor Hatcher, and all of you for inviting me here and being here this evening. Okay, I'll practice with this mic for a bit, so thank you. The exhibition that is currently on view at the Asian Art Museum is called the Maharajah, Splendors of India's Royal Courts. And in the next hour, I will walk you through some of the main themes of this exhibition and the objects that are in the show, and then show you some images of the process of some behind-the-scenes installation of images and all of that. So, and the exhibition was organized by the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, where it was on view in the fall of 2009. And since then, it's been traveling. It's now on its North American tour. The first venue was in Toronto at the Art Gallery of Ontario. San Francisco is its only West Coast venue. And after here, in April, it travels to the East Coast to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts in Richmond. The word Maharaja comes from Sanskrit, the word Maha meaning great and Raja meaning king. And the exhibition explores the complex and rich world of India's ruling families and kings. It starts in about 1700 and goes through the 1940s. So we're taking a very long journey over nearly 250 years and covering material that is from across India, so north, south, east, west, to the best possible extent, and exploring several aspects of the richness of India's kings. We have over 200 objects in the exhibition. They are, lots of paintings, beautiful paintings, not only the traditional works on paper and small scale that one typically associates with Indian painting, but also large scale works on canvas, oil on canvas. And you see two examples, one of each on the screen above. There are plenty of jeweled objects, like Professor Hatcher mentioned. This is a turban ornament that would have been worn by a ruler as a headdress. Indian rulers did not wear crowns. They wore a turban, and in the turban there would be jeweled, typically feather-shaped jeweled ornaments. A lot of ceremonial weaponry, which include swords, shields, daggers, pistols, etc., that would be part of a ruler's regalia. As well as some less expected things like Art Deco furniture. And I will explain the context of that when we get into later in this talk. A show on Indian art cannot be complete without gorgeous costumes, and we have a number of costumes for men, women, and one example, thank you, even for children. Photographs and historical films. This is a portrait of one of the queens, and it was taken by a European fashion and society photographer, Cecil Beaton. And so there are a variety of photographs as well as archival films, and plenty more. The objects also range in scale from a pair of small earrings to a 25-foot large painting to a silver carriage. So there's quite a variety, not only in medium, but technique as well as size. One of the first things that this exhibition tries to do is to look deeper into the idea of Maharaja. And there is a general impression that prevails, which is that India's kings were fabulously wealthy, with very rich and lavish lifestyles. What is not said but is implied in this whole thing is an element of opulence and decadent lifestyles, where it is all about conspicuous consumption and very little else. And some of these impressions have continued and live on in just our general use of some terms that we are familiar with, such as, for example, we know of Hollywood Moguls. The term Mughal is the term for India's one of their key dynasties, the Mughal dynasty. Very powerful in its day and very wealthy. Or closer home, Nob Hill comes from the word Nawab or Nabab, and Nawab was a title used by one of India's ruling families as well. So there is this association that pervades into our contemporary lifestyles of wealth and India. And so what this exhibition tries to do is go a little beyond and a little deeper into this perception, and to look at what is it that these kings did and what kinds of worlds did they engage in. So there are two principal story arcs that are followed through in the exhibition. The first is a thematic question, which is who is a Maharaja and what does he do? And the second one takes a historical and chronological journey, looking at the various regional kingdoms and tracing history through material culture. One other thing that is of interest in this exhibition is that nearly every object of the 200 that are in here can be directly associated with a ruler, or if not directly a ruler, with a ruling family or a court or some other kind of specific association. So the paintings, by and large, are all portraits. The objects that are here were very likely used by a known region or a court, or if not specifically associatable, then very likely the kinds of things that they would have used. So every object has multiple stories behind them, not just what they look like. And we've tried to explore some of those in the exhibition to the best that the format of an exhibition allows. So in the first gallery, we explored that question of what is an ideal ruler and what does he do? And we opened the first object that the viewer sees is this really large-scale portrait of a ruler. And it's painted on cloth, which is a relatively uncommon medium for India. And cloth paintings of this size especially do not survive, so it's a rare example of its type. And at first glance, this portrait seems a little prosaic, and it's like, okay, yeah, so he's standing there, and it looks rather unengaging at first glance, but it's actually a very potent statement of what is a king. And once we start unpacking the symbolism in here, it sets a nice foreground for the rest of the stories as they unfold. So, for instance, he is a full standing figure appearing in profile against a background that's just plain. In that sense, he is not. He's a timeless figure. He's not rooted to a specific place. He's not rooted to a specific time. He appears accessible to the viewer in that you can see him from a profile view, but he's not looking at the viewer. He is distanced from them. So he is there, but not quite in the here and now. There is a gold halo surrounding his head, and for many of us used to seeing Western representations, golden halos are associated with divinity and with saintly figures or religious figures. But in India, especially after the 16th century, halos are used to mark royal figures as well. Their elevated status is indicated through this divine light that legitimizes their rule on earth. Rulers are intermediaries between the realms of God and realm of man. So the halo suggests that idea. He is also seen wearing an elegant costume with jewelry. Men in India, and especially rulers, did wear jewelry, and that was part of what was coming from textual sources, ancient textual sources that talked about how a god or how a elevated being should be presented in their finest aspect. And so one way of indicating this finest aspect was by wearing jewelry. He also wears a turban ornament. It's a little hard to see in this slide, but it's there. It's a feather-shaped jeweled turban ornament that it was a royal prerogative. He also appears as a warrior and able leader of his people. The prime responsibility of a good ruler was to protect his subjects from both external and internal threats, so that his people could have a stable environment in which they could conduct their own daily business. And so this prominent sword attests to that role. And finally, he is not just a practical man or just not a warrior, but he is also a connoisseur and a man of cultured and refined tastes. And that's the flower that he holds in his hand. And so, like in most other cultures, in order to be recognized as a cultured individual, you had to be well versed in poetry, in music, have a taste for fine and beautiful things, and also be a patron of the arts. So that's what this introductory portrait does. And that leads us into further exploration of the various individual aspects of kingship. A ruler at first is a man of state. He conducts administrative business. He is a diplomat, and he is a lawmaker and lawgiver. And he conducts all of these affairs through his royal throne and assembly. And traditionally in India, the seat of power was not a throne as in a chair, but a cushion on the floor. And that would be surrounded with rich textiles and other objects such as smoking, a pipe for tobacco smoking, accoutrements for preparing betel leaf or pan. And in all of the galleries, we've tried to use paintings as the primary way of setting context to the ideas, and then using three-dimensional objects to kind of bring those paintings to life. So it's a little difficult to see, but back here is a painting of a Maharaja seated in his court, and the court looks very much like what you see here. Um, there are other objects as well that one sees in the paintings, and we see on display as well. This is a gorgeous jeweled turban ornament. Turban ornaments came in two parts. There would be the one part that would be propped in the turban, and then there would be a flat band that would go across. These were for a considerable period of time only a royal prerogative, which means that the only person who would be allowed to wear these would be the ruler. And in a painting, typically, if one saw a figure with a turban ornament, you would immediately recognize him as the king. However, by about 1700, it turns out that these ornaments were also given by the ruler to choice noblemen and other officials as gifts and as marks of favor, to the point that by about early 1700s, there were laws put in place to regulate who could wear these and on what occasions. There are other absolutely stunning objects. These are jeweled jades. A pot with a cover, a base of a smoking pipe or a hookah, and another a wine flask. These types of objects, again, attest to the ruler's role as a man of refined tastes, but also as an active patron. Many of these objects would have been produced at imperial workshops that would be housed within the palace complex and would be produced for use at the court itself or as gift-giving. Diplomatic gifts. Another section explores the association between religion and state. And rulers typically came from, and I'm talking about Hindu rulers right now, although in India there were Hindu, Muslim, Sikh rulers as well. But typically, for the Hindu rulers, they came from the warrior class. They were not from the priestly class. Yet they maintained an active engagement with religious affairs, either by participating in public religious ceremonies and festivals, or engaging in private devotions, such as the ruler that we see here. Or they would also be active patrons of religious establishments such as mosques, temples, that belonged not only to their own faith, but that were used by members of other faiths living in their kingdom. These responses varied. The patronage of religious establishments for other religions varied on a case-by-case basis, but they were done. Rulers would also support charitable institutions and support the hospices of saints. One other thing that comes out in here is that the symbols that would be used for worshipping the divine were also adopted by kings, in that role of kings being a bridge between the world of man and God. So, for example, this is the divinity image here, and you can see that the divinity is wearing pearl necklaces, just like we see rulers doing. There are attendants holding fly whisks, peacock feather fans, and in other cases, yak's hair whisks. And these were also symbols that would be used by kings as well. So there is a blurring, in some ways, visual blurring of the recognizability of gods and kings, and it's a selective adaptation process that happens over many centuries. And it's not quite unlike even some of our leaders and presidents who actively engage with religious activity in order to support and further their own political agendas. So it's a long practice and universal. The spaces in the museum are such that the exhibition is divided into 3 galleries that are separate spaces. So you have to walk out of one room and then go into another, and then walk out of that room and go into yet another. And so the second gallery continues the same theme of who is a king and what does he do by looking at some other aspects of it. We open the second room with looking at the ruler as a grand public figure. So in the world before radio broadcast, television, internet, photography, the only ways in which people could get some kind of contact or connection with their rulers or their leaders was by way of these public processions. And what you see here is an elephant throne. It's a silver throne on a wooden core that would be placed on top of a heavily decorated elephant that would be covered with a rich blanket like this. The ruler would be sitting in front, and his attendants would be at the back, and they would be holding something like a fly whisk or yak-tail fly whisk or a peacock feather fan. And somewhere around here, if you can imagine this as being an elephant, would be the mahout or the elephant driver who would be leading the elephant.